Thank you so much, Christopher, for joining us. It's a pleasure to finally connect. I know you're a busy man. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'll tell you what, you and I connected since we met in Miami. And I feel like it was just definitely for us to reconnect at some point. And I feel blessed, been in the quarantine and staying safe, but making sure that, I make time for what's important.
No, that's really important, and thank you so much for sharing that. I see you suited and booted, so I know you're all about business. For context, I had the pleasure of meeting you back in Miami. We were both on a financial panel. So, for context, tell the audience what you do now and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Well, you got to show up and show out. You just never know who you're going to meet. And, obviously, this is how I present myself. It's just my character. It's funny because I was a professional athlete in my past life, had some time with NFL, the CFL, and things took a turn for me. I got a second chance at life and realizing that, family is so important to me. I had to take a step aside from sport and reinvent myself. I fell back on a master's degree, got from University of Charleston in West Virginia, and decided that, when I became healthy enough after a rehab to jump and hit the ground running and become a financial planner. I love it. I've been doing it for 5 years. It's a passion. I'm registered to be able to kind of share ideas about different types of strategies. But really, when you think about it, I serve the people. I serve the community. Some of the key areas where I have expertise in is in three specifically. I help nonprofits, really help them understand how to attract donors, bring together some, strategies that are allowing them to, really maximize their contributions in a multiple and really allow them to leave a legacy, not only for their organization of choice, but also for their families. Now, outside of, nonprofits, I work with business owners, help them understand how to exit one day, cash out. You work so hard, you don't want to wait for retirement, and you want to know when it's time for you to retire. But if you have a sustainable business, evaluation will help you understand how to exit that business seamlessly. Now, for people who have a legacy with their families and they inherit a corporation or a business and they want to keep the business, to continue for the next generation, that's a succession plan. I really help people get organized and understand how to transfer that to the next generation. And lastly, Moby, I'm helping people. I love people. It's kind of, what drives me and allows me to wake up every morning blessed. And, I help people get their affairs organized, from helping them with their estate planning and getting wills, documents done, diversifying their investment portfolios, helping them really save money efficiently. So, I've had the ability to, do what I'm doing now. And it's just something that I love. And I'm going to continue and probably not stop for a while.
No, that's amazing. And you could just tell, like, you get so passionate about it when you speak. So it just shows that, you have a real passion for it, and you do your best to help the people that you serve. I want to ask, because you had a professional career both in the NFL and CFL. You mentioned like being able to fall back on your masters. Is that something that you always planned, or, how did it all work?
Well, I'll tell you, when I got a scholarship, I played 1 year of high school football. I'm 6'7", 85-inch wingspan. I run a 4.9 seconds in 40 yards. I'm the big man running. But when you think about that, it was kind of me preparing myself for what was next. As athletes, you always, have the perception that, sport is never going to end. But when you think about it, it's the people you surround yourself around that help you kind of level up. Now, I went into sport because I knew for me it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to advance my life. I didn't grow up in the bestest of neighborhoods. I didn't go to the richest universities. I had to get it from the ground up. Like they say, you got to get the butter from the duck. And obviously, when you think about that, the mentality that I had was to make sure that I was going to be able to propel myself, even if it wasn't about sport. Now, sports got me into university. Now, sports paid my way, but I knew for a fact I wanted to become a businessman. I used to watch a lot of movies, and, as a young child, I watched Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, and that was kind of something that just stood out to me my whole life. Pork bellies, orange juice futures, and I'm like, whoa, how come these rich guys are always, in getting driven, always looking good, and they can make decisions? Now, the overall perspective of the movie, really opened up my eyes to say, well, you know what? Why don't we have enough brothers, enough sisters, going after finance? And I
Yeah.
didn't want to be a status quo. So I said, you know what? I want to learn business. And I'm going to make sure that if sport does not work out for me, I went to a Division II university. We didn't have ESPN highlights. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have any, humongous entourage. It was because of me having work ethic, being able to be disciplined, that got me a look with the league. So that was really the mind frame from the very beginning to say, well, listen, sports is going to help me get through, but at some point sports will be over because I'm going to get too damn old. So I got to, be able to do something different.
That's true.
So
That's
my
good.
mentality going in was mostly focused on getting an education and then
Uh-huh.
allowing sports to just open doors.
That's really important. And it seems that you already had your own succession plan, regardless of injury or regardless of how long you played in the NFL. And then now you're doing that now. So can you talk about how you help, I don't want to say specifically athletes, but individuals in terms of what mindset does it take to, start thinking about the future when you kind of have it all right now? It's hard to tell an athlete like, I know you're making $1 million, but it might be gone tomorrow. It's like, you don't want them to think like that, but they have to in a sense.
Absolutely. It's the perspective. It's kind of making sure you surround yourself with the right team. Team is all about really legacy because your team is your family. Your team is the people that you play next to on that field. Your team is the experts that you surround yourself with when it comes to financial planning. Now, obviously, when you prepare for that next level, that next step, you got to eat right, you got to get enough rest, you got to hydrate your body, and you got to be around the right type of winners and
Yeah.
have that winning mentality. It's the same approach, not only that you apply in sport, that you apply in the real world. And by making sure that you're preparing yourself to be great, you don't get great, in 1 year.
Yeah.
You become good in that year, but then you have to start somewhere at the basics. The basics get you good, and then becoming good gets you to great, and then you leave a legacy. So essentially, when you think about those steps, it's all about making sure that you can kind of write down those goals. Make sure that if you have big dreams, you never stop. I never stopped. I got a second chance at life, and I didn't stop. I said, you know what, this is going to be the fuel to my fire to allow me to be able to pursue something that, is unexpected. I didn't want to be a status quo. I didn't want to be a guy that was just another guy that just, tried it, didn't make it, and then obviously, went back to a 9 to 5. That
Yeah.
wasn't for me, and it would never be for me because I knew for a fact I was going to be a boss from day one.
Respect. And you suited and booted like one too. So for the athletes, because you already knew, like you watched Trading Places, you had an aspiration to become a businessman. So for the athletes that struggle finding that second chance at life, like that passion that drives them like they did on the football field or the basketball court or soccer field, what's the process of going into finding that next thing? Because some people don't know before they end their career of what they want to do next.
Well, you go back to, the roots. Your parents, taught you how to save. Your parents wanted you to make sure that you had the proper amount of food in your belly so you can perform. So you think about that is when you start becoming mature. It's all about, surrounding yourself with the people that can give you advice, that can give you guidance, but not ever being satisfied with the answer. There's always a few different answers that work for somebody in particular. And there's never a cookie cutter approach to anything in life. You really, when you start maturing and start becoming stronger mentally, you start realizing that there's things that you like and there's things you don't like. So when you have that inquisitive nature, it's like when you're on that field and you're midway on that field and you're running that ball, dribbling, and for a fact it's how you're gonna pass that ball, you're gonna shoot. You gotta make that decision. And
Yeah.
you make that decision based off of what? Mental awareness. And you make that decision based off of you can execute and deliver. So it's never going to be a perfect situation where you know what to do all the time, but you got to take risks. And the biggest risk is not taking risks. So when you think about that, it's really allowing yourself to really put yourself in the position. If you can put yourself in the position and you continue to believe in your belief system, there's no chance that you will not land on your feet.
That's a great answer and a perfect segue to my next question. Obviously, you work with charities, legacy planning, succession planning, making sure affairs are in order. You talked about You talked about it was just great. You talked about how you can really take risk because you have to take risk, and ultimately to lead to the next thing. So how do athletes specifically in terms of their succession, what are some ways they can make sure that's a viable option? Everyone has a different route, but what are some ways they can make that a viable option with
Sure.
what you do?
Well, with what I do, it's really getting yourself organized financially and providing yourself with financial security, knowing that you're never going to run out of money. And
Mhm.
obviously, when you talk about a succession plan, it starts with the very simplistic things. With are you saving a portion of your earnings? Are you living within your means? Do you understand that you can get a paycheck and it could be seasonal? It can be there or not, depending on if there's a bargaining agreement that hesitates from being deployed out. It's a lot of factors where you may not get paid. So you have to kind of figure out how to set a budget for yourself, how to look at ways to live frugally, and to make sure that you're not wasting your resources. Because here's the thing, your health is wealth. And without you being able to perform at that high level, the next guy could be up or
Yeah.
gal.
No, that's true. And like for athletes, athletes are big on legacy. When people get drafted, the first thing they want to do is like, I want to buy my mom a house. I want to get my dad situated. I want to do this. So legacy is already within us. But I feel like the way you think about legacy is generational. So how can, and I keep focusing on athletes because obviously this is an athlete-centered podcast, but this applies to anyone. What are some ways that we can apply legacy planning to our own situation outside of just taking care of our family materially? And I know with compliance you got to be you can't really be technical, but what are some basic principles that we can talk about?
Absolutely. You can go to Walmart and get a notepad and a pen and start there. And
That's respect. I got one right here. Got one right
because,
here.
because when you think about legacy, it's not necessarily I'm going to have the magical legacy, once I inherit or I earn, all my resources. It's really kind of thinking about, well, what do you want to leave behind? How do
Mhm.
you want people to remember your name, the good that you did in the community, your belief system that you work hard to achieve your success? When you think about a legacy, it really goes back to your upbringing. Do you want to make sure that the way you were raised, you allow your family and your children to be raised the same way? Do you want to make sure that you provide them enough resources to give them a step forward and a step ahead, but you don't want to allow somebody to be pacified by the resources that you can provide to them, and you hinder them?
Mhm.
You put them in a position to where they're relying and waiting for the will to be deployed out
That's
in
true.
another situation. So when you think about ways that an athlete today who's training hard, going to class, or even in the pros right now can establish a legacy, it's putting your thoughts down, writing it out. What does your goal look like for the next month? What does it look like for the next quarter, for the next year? And then where you start seeing yourself 5 to 10 years out. It's baby steps. It's making sure that you can apply what makes sense to you today. Because the person who's 28 today is not going to be the same person at 32. And that person's not going to be the same at 42. So when you start thinking about it, every sport has a certain time where you have to exit, because there's
That's
going to
true.
be a next guy, a next girl who's faster, who's quicker, who's more aware, and who can execute by a millisecond faster. So it's so competitive today that you have to have an exit plan from when you get into any sport that you pursue. So it's not necessarily about always surrounding yourself with experts, because sometimes those experts cost, but it's surrounding yourself around good mentors, asking people that you look up to today, what do they do? What are they thinking about? And asking the elderly, the athletes that were there before you, what were you thinking about when you first got into the game? What did you think about when you made it on the team? What did you think about when you got your first large check? What did you do
Mhm.
with it? Did you go out and party? Did you have some fun? Well, nobody says you can't do that. You should do that because you earned it. But at
Mhm.
the same time, it's not the time to go spend on everybody that you grew up with, and even your family. You have to have that sense of discipline to say, yes, you are successful. Yes, you are a highlight, But at the same time, you have to realize that you're taking away from your future by spending money and living with like the Jones. That right there is really where failure is worse than somebody who doesn't plan out to be successful. And if you become a failure because you didn't know how to manage your resources, you really got to look in the mirror and say, it was all on me.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really, I took a lot away from that. You know, you got to be proactive. You got to be genuinely curious to ask questions to the people before you or mentors. And then you got to be disciplined. You know, it's worse to be, like you said, a failure because, you know, you weren't disciplined enough to make the right decision. And I want to take it back to the impact, because obviously you work with charities, athletes, especially now in this current climate that we're going through, whether it's COVID or the social injustices. A lot of athletes now want to get involved in the nonprofit space. So with charities, I started my own. I had no idea it was as complex as it was. I thought you could just like say you want to volunteer, say you want to put on a camp, people will donate, and that's it. But there's a lot of things that go behind it. So can you kind of give us like a charity 101, you know, from having the right structure so you're not getting in trouble by the IRS because you still have to fall within legal implications and guidelines, and raising money, because if you don't do it the right way, spending your own money over the course of time with no action plan for a charity, it's still not a good business per se, even though you're trying to help people. So please give us like the Kristoffer 101.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, it's definitely you know, an honor to speak to a gentleman like yourself, MOB, and see that you have such a further vision outside of your day-to-day and also your sport, that you want to give back. Here's where I can share some insight. Charity is about giving. Charity is about allowing somebody else to be lifted in some way that they were not lifted before, or providing access to resources that they may not have had before. So when you think about charity, your heart has to be in it. It's not about a tax write-off. It's not about just trying to be a status quo in the community or become a celebrity and figure out, you know, quick ways to be able to get tax deductions. It's not about that. A charity, you got to run it the same way like a business. And when that being said, you have to make sure your registrations are up to date. The way that you file your applications are correct. The way that you make sure that you can, you know, work with somebody who can help you and build an infrastructure to help you grow your organization. There's a lot of organizations who become organizations, but they're not sustainable. And they rely on that one contribution, that quarterly, you know, a special event. That's not going to make you sustainable to be able to really live out your mission. Your mission is what drives forward the organization and creates that belief system so your board members can help you grow. Whoever creates an organization is really the face of the organization, that promotes, that gets, you know, new opportunities. But really, when you have an established organization, your board, your committees, your governance structure is really what's making it work. The boots on the ground, the heavy lifting. Because when you think about it, you have to have different layers of leadership to be able to execute at a high level. Your governance committee, your finance committee, your development committee, you know, your audit committee. This is things that you have to maintain in order to run a successful organization. Organizations that's been around for 80 plus years versus the brand new startup organization. You get the tax exemption by making sure you're compliant, making sure you're following the IRS rules, making sure that you're up to speed with compliance, and making sure you're running an equitable, a fair, respectful organization that has respect for all walks of life. So when you have that mentality of running your nonprofit like a business, now we're talking about advancing you to the next level.
Wow. I feel like I need to cut that clip alone and just have it at its own segment. I think it's really important. Look, when you started off as, you know, athletes don't just do nonprofits or charity work to have your name in the community. You know, do it for the right reasons, you know, giving back, creating impact, giving other people the opportunity that, you know, you were so fortunate to have. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's something that I'm going through right now. Like, because I made one simple mistake in the registration, now it like pushes everything back. So now I got to make sure I like reorganize it so I'm in compliance. And then when you're in compliance, when you have the right infrastructure, then you can create a better and bigger and larger impact with the community that you're trying to reach out. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I want to take it into business, because obviously you're into business, I'm into business. This is really exciting. A lot of the same principles that you've applied for succession planning, legacy, nonprofit, I feel carry over to businesses. A lot of athlete entrepreneurs are coming out being more confident in the businesses that they want to do, whether it's investing, whether it's starting franchises, whether it's doing their own thing, consulting companies. What principles, what ways make it easier in your experience for athletes to, you know, see these big exits, see these big growth potential with the companies that they are working with?
Yeah, it's all about not being a status quo, you know, really reinventing the wheel. Every single day, there are a billion entrepreneurs all across the world who are creating things, who are joining organizations, and who are adding value. So if you have that ferocious nature about yourself, you got to go after it. You can't slow down, because there's somebody else that's already thinking about that, and somebody who's already tried that before. The only difference today is, are you really going to take this idea and hit the ground running at a very, very optimal pace?
Mm-hmm.
Here's really where you set yourself apart, by having ideas and following through on those ideas. Because obviously, when you have something like an idea, you can bring it to life and then build around that idea, bring the right people into the mix. But make sure that you are, again, going back to asking questions, making sure that you are able to understand what you don't know. You don't know sometimes what you don't know, but obviously the more questions you ask, it allows you to understand what you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So research is important, making sure that you can, you know, get in front of the right influences, and then find out who's done it before. There's nothing with you trying to figure out what the competition is doing and what you can do to collaborate with other people in the same industry. Because obviously there's always something that you can gain, something you can pick up from, and a nugget that you didn't think about before by just seeing it and seeing what's out there. So a lot of times it's not really about reinventing the wheel. It's about just making sure that you can build something around your perspective, your vision, and then crystallizing it. Everybody replicates a lot of stuff. But when you think about that, it's all about making sure that you can put your signature touch on there. You can put your brand on there. You can really allow your quality, your goodwill, your efforts to really make you stand out from the rest.
So it's really not about who does it first, about who does it better, and like who aligns with whoever their demographic is, essentially.
Absolutely. Your story has to align with your mission, with your vision, and even your business. Because obviously, when you think about it, it's not about, you know, always, you know, chasing the mighty coin, the mighty dollar. That comes along with the success. But if you know that you mentally are prepared for the challenge and you accept that challenge, there's nothing that can stop you. When I had to put my hand in the dirt, line up in a 2-point, 3-point stance, all I saw was the opponent in front of me to say, make sure to protect my quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that guy gets outside of me or through me, the game is over.
Yeah.
So what I put in my mind was, I got to be my best. I got to prepare myself. I got to study my playbook. I got to make sure that I know what's going on, and I'm prepared for an audible, for a change immediately. Because I never know what's going to come. We had no idea the coronavirus was going to strike us in March. We're still today is September 1st, and we're still in the pandemic. We don't even have a vaccine. So a lot of us athletes had to reinvent ourselves. When they closed the gyms down, did we stop working out? Probably not.
No.
We figured out something at home. We did our own workout. We went back to Rocky Balboa days and went back in the freezer, and we were, you know, punching the meat. We were running around, you know, up and down the hills. We were getting some type of work done. That didn't stop us.
Yeah.
So that mentality is the same mentality you apply in life. When you get knocked down, you get back up and you keep fighting. You keep running harder. You show that the opponent is not going to beat you by you giving up and you slowing down. So that's the same approach if you're an athlete going into a business. Be prepared to get knocked out. Be prepared to get, dropped, but also be prepared when you get back up, you're going to be a lot more aware. You're
Yeah,
going to be
that's
a
a
lot
great.
more ready. And
Yeah,
that's really what success and how you identify your character in success.
no, that's really cool because the best athletes are the ones that are able to adjust, and whether it's an audible, whether it's to like read a scheme and go another way, and the best businesses are the ones that are able to, adjust as well. So I really appreciate that you were able to explain it in a sports terminology way. That's what it's all about, to make it more understandable. So when it comes to valuation, how does one value themselves? Obviously, as athletes, we value ourselves. Agent negotiates on our behalf. We feel like we need to play for the right compensation. But when it comes to businesses, there's so many businesses, there's so many entrepreneurs. What financial principles, terms, like what are we supposed to be looking for when it comes to how do we properly evaluate ourselves when a possible exit or when a possible partnership or collaboration is bound to happen?
Absolutely. Well, it's all about protecting yourself first and foremost in any business. Making sure that, before you get into a business, you want to spend time with a partner. You want to spend time with understanding the industry. Spend time with doing your homework, because again, when we had to prepare, many, many countless hours to just take those finals, it was a final that took an hour, but we had to probably study for a quarter just to be able to prepare for that one final. So that's the same application where we're preparing for the playoffs. We gotta study, we gotta train, we gotta eat right the whole year to get ready for that big stage that one day. So the same application applies to being a business owner or getting into business with somebody. You're gonna spend way more time with a business partner opposed to your significant other. So when you think about that, you got to first identify if the energy is right. I'm all about energy. I'm all about if it makes sense and we can connect on that level, then now you have some type of synergies with that person. You got to like each other first before you think about signing a contract and getting involved with another person and then thinking longevity, it's going to work. That's a divorce waiting to happen. So when you think, so when you think about that, you got to have commonality with the person. You may have some indifferences, but if you can agree to disagree, but then also understand that it's for the greater good, you can come to a common ground. So when you're thinking about, well, how do I even envision an exit strategy? How do I evaluate, a person? Well, energy doesn't lie, and your overall instincts don't lie. Because when you're in that field, you're on that court, you're on that hockey rink, your instincts are going to allow you to make decisions way quicker than that playbook that you study. As long as you know your stuff, your X's and O's, but for a fact, you're going to make a decision based off instinct. Is it the right time? And that also plays a factor. The timing is also very important when you're thinking about getting involved in any type of entrepreneur business. Does it make sense? Do you have the time to put into it? Do you have the resources that can really make this happen? And then obviously the type of people you surround yourself with to help you with things that you don't have capabilities of doing. That's really where you got to evaluate yourself to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. We're not perfect. The only person that's perfect is Jesus and God Almighty. So when you think about that, all we can do is our best versions of ourselves. And by being able to be the best version of yourselves is going back to, understanding the sector you want to be in, the competition that you're getting ready to, play against, and then making sure that you can identify the eye and the prize. Why am I doing this? Am I getting this for a stepping stone to bring me to something else that I've always wanted to accomplish? Or is this something I really want to put my heart and soul in, and I can see myself doing this until I get to retirement? Retirement could be very different for all different types of athletes. You got athletes now who are retiring at 35 after, a boxing match. You got athletes who are still, going, all the way until they're 40, like, Brett Favre's, the Tom Brady's. These guys are in their 40s and they're still playing. They're still active. So it goes back to, well, what does your exit strategy really mean for you? Not for your family, not for your partners, for yourself. Because when you know it's time to exit, you'll know the right reasons why you even get into that business. And you'll know that from day one. As you
Yeah.
get closer to that vision, as you get closer to your destiny, things can change. You have a lot of things that are going to be thrown at you, life events, maybe family, marriage, kids. But at the end of the day, it doesn't take your eye off the prize. And that's really where you have more passion that will bring you closer to wealth. So it's no secret sauce. We all got into a sport because we tried it out.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us developed a little stronger in certain areas that made us identify that this is something you can actually do for a longer time. When you started realizing there's studying, there's execution, there's becoming, an athlete, but working on yourself, working on your strengths and weaknesses, and really making sure that you can really perfect those areas of imperfection. That's really where you're identifying, okay, well, why am I doing this, and how long can I actually have duration while I'm doing this? You can answer those questions before you get into any business, any entrepreneur opportunity for yourself to know, well, is there a timeline, or is this something I really want to do until I get into retirement?
No, it's really cool. It's like the work you put in before the work will help you ultimately in your work. And I really appreciate you dissecting that down like really well. Before I let you go, obviously, you talked about people adjusting, talk about planning. If you could do it all over again, what advice would you have for young Kristoffer or someone going through this specific situation right now? Season was about to start, season got canceled in March. How they try to, what applications should they apply to adjust, whether it's during COVID or whether it's just in this new day and age, like what businesses, what trends should we be looking for? Things like that.
Well, it's a great question. If it was younger me, I would say, well, I'm going to spend more time, becoming knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
and spend more time, really educating myself, whether it's podcasts, whether it's going to the library, going on the internet, whether it's asking questions, surrounding myself with winners. Because there's a certain mentality that you have when you are able to be confident about your material. And when you are able to apply the knowledge and really allow that to reciprocate back into success. So if it were younger me, I would spend more time, pushing myself to study more things that, I was excited about, whether it's science, it's math, it's reading, it's social studies, it's looking at political stuff. It's all things that we have to make decisions as we get older and evolve to say, well, is this really where I want to spend more of my time learning this? And is this going to help me for tomorrow? There are hobbies, and then there's execution to get it done, to get paid. Follow the money, follow the trend. Put yourself in position to be a success. But it takes hard work. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I didn't become a financial person in a month, in a week. It took 5 years for me to feel this confidence to be able to get on a podcast and share a little bit of my story. I got many, many moons ahead of me, things that I'm being humble about, to bring myself always to live on earth. And that's really the character. When you don't know something, get yourself in the arena with somebody who does know. Follow somebody who's done it before. So the overall feedback and the nugget that I want to leave with, the audience is never give up. Follow your dream. Don't be, happy with the status quo, and always know there's somebody else that's ready to take your job.
That's
And with
fact.
that mentality, there's no chance that you will not be successful, because you're always going to be head on a swivel, and you're never going to be compliantly, sitting back thinking that you've made it. Once you feel like you've made it, that's really where things get slower, you get complacent, and you kind of, give up the same, energy that you had before. You got to always be competing, and you got to always become better. And if that's, training better, eating better, health is wealth. So making sure that you apply yourself with the right people, the principle and techniques for your own game. Be a master at your own game. That's the nugget I want to leave with the people and, with the audience.
No, that's facts. You never ever give up, because someone's always behind you trying to get it. Like in football, next man up, and then be the master of your own game. I think that's really important too. Whether it's football, business, charity. You know, you got to master it. You got to be able to understand it. You got to make sure that you have confidence explaining it to somebody else confidently. You know, you talked about, you know, as you continue to learn in the finance space, you know, being comfortable enough to be on a podcast. And I definitely am excited because I think you got some things in the works that you're being humble about. I know you've been doing some things on the Instagram and the social media. So before I let you leave, please let the audience know where they could find you, where they could reach out to you, connect with you, and all that.
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Kristoffer Doura Planner on Facebook. You can find me as well on my website, kristofferplanner.com. And also, you know, follow me wherever you can on social media. I think it's such a day and age where everything digital is kind of what's happening right now. We're totally accessible. You know, reach out. You know, don't be afraid to open up all sports, all walks of life, all types of professionals. Let's just have a conversation. Not everybody will become a client. Not everybody will do business. But if we can have a conversation and learn something from each other, let's make the time. Let's make sure that we can allow each other to lift each other up. And that's where, you know, I feel that, you know, I'm very excited. And I appreciate you for inviting me on your show. I look forward to many, many more collaborations. And there's a lot of stuff in the works, but I'll tell
Yeah, I
you
know.
what, this was definitely something that I wanted to make the time for. And, you know, I really appreciate you for allowing me to share a little bit of my story. So thank you so much, MOB.
No, I really appreciate it, Kristoffer. And definitely we're going to have all his information in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much. Lots of gems, all about legacy, all about giving back, all about mastering your craft. I feel like we can go on forever. So I got to ask one last question. If there's one book that you would recommend, you know, from a personal development or financial literacy standpoint, what would it be?
Well, it's actually a book that I'm reading right now at the moment. And this is
Perfect.
just getting out of my comfort zone. And I actually, you know, I do follow Ray Dalio,
Okay.
called Principles. And it's
Okay.
just, you know, giving you some perspective on, you know, what he did along his journey to be able to run one of the largest, you know, hedge funds in the United States, 165 billion. And when you think about that, what did somebody like that do along their path to be able to get to that level of success? And that's a book that I'm just, you know, very, you know, I got my teeth sunk in. I'm just learning nuggets and just getting a lot of stuff to just help my future self. And obviously, these are the type of books that I like to read. But at the same time, you know, things that I see myself at some point, you know, really leveling up in the financial sector myself and learning more from these type of leaders. So that's a book that I'm reading at the moment. And I encourage others to, you know, read books that, you know, that are different. Read books that, you know, allow you to think in a different capacity. And, you know, always, you know, feed your brain, because your brain, they can't take that away from you.
That's true.
They
That's
can
true.
take away
Be
your
aware.
paycheck. They can take away your contract. They can take away you not playing anymore, getting playing time, but they can never take away what's up here, and that's your knowledge.
That's true. And I like, you know, learning from the best, you know, learn from winners, be around winners, and be a winner yourself. So once again, thanks again, Kristoffer. Like I said, audience, we're going to have all this information in the show notes. Appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, do what you need to do. Catch you guys later.